This video is going to be my second preview for the Ravens-Browns matchup in Week 10 in Baltimore. A little bit late getting this one out. I would prefer to have had this one out Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. But in any case, the Ravens find themselves not only in front of the AFC North at the halfway point, for at least the Ravens, beyond the halfway point, but still only one game ahead of the Steelers, Bengals, and Browns in the loss column. I think it's a really unique situation. As Ravens fans, we know or we feel like our team has played really well over the course of the season, particularly with the injuries that we've dealt with. Nonetheless, all three of those teams are only one game behind us in the loss column. I think it's a really rare situation for the AFC North to have so many teams with winning records. Are going to come out in the next two games, 5 days, and either the Ravens are going to sweep, split, or go 0-2 and change the dynamic of this season altogether. Today's rematch is extremely important on that note, not just to stay ahead of the Browns, and put some distance between us and the Browns, 2 games in the loss column, but also we got an opportunity to win 2 division games in a 5-day span. Look, the Browns rely on a really fast, physical, and often overwhelming defense. You just have to say it. I mean, if you look at the statistics, they've had 4 games where they've held teams to less than 10 first downs in a 60-minute football game. Conversely, the Ravens defense leads the league in points per game allowed, among other categories, which I won't list here. You can go look them up yourself. Now we face Deshaun Watson without Nick Chubb, without 2 of his starting offensive tackles. Jedrick Willis is on IR. DeJuan Jones is out for at least this week. Nonetheless, the Browns come in averaging 22.6 points per game under offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt. Still third in the league in rushing yards per game, I believe, at 144 per game. Unfortunately, they're also the 4th worst in the NFL in passing yards per game. You would think that latter number will improve with Deshaun Watson's return to regularly being available for all 60 minutes every week. His numbers from last week weren't fantastic. 19 for 30, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't turn the football over. The film was very inconsistent, to be honest with you. He had an excellent game back in Week 3, the last full game that he played in 2023 before Week 9. In their 27-3 win over the Titans that their defense just dominated, he was 27 of 33, sharp with a lot of his reads, 290 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. To see him last week, drastic difference in execution and the speed with which he made reads, I thought. I want to cover 4 or 5 elements here this morning. This is not intended to be a complete preview. I've already covered the Ravens' offense against Myles Garrett and Jim Schwartz's defense. Check that video out if you want. I'll link it up here. I'm going to cover the Ravens' pass defense potentially without Marlon Humphrey. He's not ruled out as of this recording, but if it actually is a hamstring, which is the report, he could easily go down at any point during the game. Strain or consistent, a 10-12 play drive, the more times he's asked to fast twitch, explode off of that leg, potentially means there's the possibility to the reoccurrence of injury. So we'll cover some of our coverages without him and guys who might take the place, Ronald Darby and Rock Ya-Sin. Rock Ya-Sin was, of course, inactive last week against the Seahawks, so I don't know who will or will not be active. Those 2 guys, to me, look like the main guys who'd be available to take Marlon's place. And I offered you that they've played pretty well when they've been on the field. We're going to cover the Browns' usage of jumbo personnel grouping. In my terminology, the terminology that I was taught, jumbo means a 6th offensive lineman on the field. And in some cases, the Browns actually put 7. I'll show you one of those plays here. It could be with 1 running back. It could be with 2 tight ends. It could be with 2 other running backs on the field, although the Browns don't necessarily employ a fullback at all. But the point is, they make consistent and persistent use of having a 6th offensive lineman on the field who, of course, in the NFL has to report as eligible. Related to that topic or that element will be Van Pelt's commitment to using trick plays or some type of obfuscation. They rely on it at least twice a game, sometimes more. As a defense, you never know when it's coming. That's the whole point. The offense knows and you don't. But you know that it's going to occur at some time. Alex Van Pelt he's committed to these things. I'm not a huge fan of them. Not necessarily from a Ravens fan perspective, but from a former defensive coordinator. So I'll get into that when we get to that part. And then finally, their run schemes and the three running backs that they're relying on at this point, and the ways they get the ball to David and Njoku on screens and shovel passes. And I'll give you two pre-snap indicators as a fan for what you can look for to kind of tell pre-snap that those things might occur. So the first one we'll get into is the Ravens' pass defense. Look, it's been brilliant all season, but even better since Marlon Humphrey's return to full health. One route concept, however, that's given us trouble and seems to be the Browns' favorite, they run it at least once or twice a game, is the sail concept. Deshaun Watson and the Browns run it often, and I'll show you some film of them run it in the previous season. But you get something like this where either it's going to be a vertical up the top or bottom of the numbers. Sometimes they'll bring it, on like a corner route, and then the tight end will bring and these routes are not drawn to scale in terms of where they actually go. I only have so much screen to draw, but that's what you get. Occasionally you'll get it from the other side of the field. I would call that over or Yankee. But this is what has given us trouble. By the way, there is a sixth offensive lineman on the field right now. Here it is against the Cardinals. It allows Amari Cooper to get behind the corner. You can see the conflict that corner is put in because the route by Njoku threatens him late after Cooper has already got on top of him. So how do you defend it? Does your safety take Njoku in the corner run there? That's possible. That also opens you up for the possible adjustment of this guy starting to bring the route to the outside and then bringing it back to the middle. And since your safety is now vacating to take the deep out route by the tight end, so that's one way that teams could defend it. The Ravens defended another way, and in some cases not very well. It's beating us with Humphrey on the field. This is last year, Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, week 7, I believe, in Baltimore. Play action, same exact situation. Cooper and Njoku to the left, to the offense's left. The defense is right. I think they ran it twice in the return match that the Ravens lost up there in Cleveland. But you can see Njoku, Cooper to the left, ball on the left hash. There does seem to be some type of pattern or tendency when these things are run. The ball seems to be on the left hash. Same exact situation. Njoku running the out. Cooper going vertical. Marlon takes the out. Whoever was supposed to take Cooper deep did not. Big play generated on the same concept. 2022 still, this is with Watson at quarterback. This is similar conceptually. Now, why are they calling so many half-field reads for Deshaun Watson? I don't get into that whole conversation about, they don't read, the quarterback doesn't read things well, and that's why they do it. I mean, everyone runs these plays. So what are we doing? We're judging certain quarterbacks harshly when teams run these and not others. It's a weird dynamic to me, but it's conceptually the same thing. Instead of having the tight end run this route into the vacated space, theoretically it's the receiver from the other side of the field. I would just call it over Yankee, but other people have different terminology. You can see that Cooper is bringing the route to the inside to get this guy committed and make the quarterback's read more clear, meaning to get him away from the sideline. Quicken the read for the quarterback, open up more space by getting that corner out of there. Big game. These plays seem to be only called from the left hash by the Browns the last 2 years. So as a fan looking at this in the game when the ball's on the left hash, of course the broadcast view sometimes pre-snap you don't even get some of that information. But if you're paying attention to the game, you can tell at the end or conclusion of the last play where the ball should be. And generally I feel like it's between the negative 35 and the positive 35 when they're calling these plays. How have the Ravens defended it differently? Now, this is run to the field, to the right-hand side. So the ball's still on the left hash, but it's going to be run over to this side. Nico Collins is going to run the deep over. I think that's Robert Woods to the downside is going to run the vertical. You're not going to be able to do this with the ball into the boundary necessarily if it's 11 personnel because your nickel defender will be to the field. In this case, it's our base defensive personnel. Kyle Hamilton spins down, and this shows you what he's capable of. He's brilliant against this concept. He understands that the quarterback is booting out. Kyle's not responsible for quarterback. There's a flat route that I think Malik Harrison takes. Watch Kyle Hamilton identify this route, fit underneath of it, get in the window so that Stroud can't get it there. Really, there's nowhere for him to throw this football unless he throws it to the tight end down here to the sideline. Still ends up being like a 3-yard gain after all of that momentum, all of that movement. So great job by Kyle Hamilton. Not exactly how you defend the sail concept. I would say this one's different, but conceptually you can see you've got a vertical clear out route and then something either originating from the same side in Njoku, the first 2 plays I showed you, or a wide receiver from the other side who has more speed to get there. Additionally, against us, Watson last year attacked to the boundary a lot. We tend to play man to the boundary when there's trips or bunch to the field. So we're talking about a different thing now. 2 receivers to the boundary, looking for sail concept. Especially if Njoku's over here, you can see Njoku's to the field. That's the difference. They've basically moved the tight end to the field. And we tend to play man to the boundary. In this case, Bowser's matching up with the running back to the flats. Humphrey is on number 1, and it's an easy completion for a first down. Without Marlon in week 4, and of course not facing Deshaun Watson, Darby and Rock Ya-Sin played quite well. That's kind of the point that I'm talking about here. At this point, like I said, Marlon has not been ruled out. Hamstring injury doesn't sound good. Those 2 guys, if they're forced into action, when they've been on the field recently, they've been quite well. Darby's up top, and he's played, I think, 18 snaps in the past 4 weeks. Something like that, so not much. Up top doing a nice job on the deep stop. And then Njoku is beating Geno Stone man, because I think Roquan vacated the middle of the field and our man free to go help out over there. Generally, you got a nice job out of those guys. Additionally, Daryl Worley played really well against the Browns. Here he is at safety. He's just decking Donovan Peoples-Jones on a ball that's deflected by Roquan Smith, nearly intercepted from this bunch set. He also had a pass that he disrupted or dislodged. Actually, both him and Darby at the top side of the field. Defending it as the quarterback breaks contain, gets away from Kyle Van Noy. Darby's going to kind of leverage the running back to the outside, so he's going to stay outside of him, not let that running back get to the sideline. But watch Worley break on this ball that ends up being thrown to Moore. I think I showed this at least in one other film study video. Worley's physical, and getting him on the field is a good thing. We don't want to have to be forced into getting him on the field because that means Marcus Williams or Kyle Hamilton or Geno Stone or somebody's hurt. But when we've had him on the field, Darby on the field, Rock Ya-Sin on the field, those guys have played quite well, which is why I remember doing a video in August talking about how the Ravens can survive without Marlon Humphrey and actually getting some negative reactions to it. And it turns out that we've been very blessed with good depth at DB. Bringing in Darby and Rock Ya-Sin was a smart move by us, and we've gotten really classic football play out of them. This is brilliant stuff down here at the bottom side by Millette, who's also playing well, Darby, and then Hamilton. Cover 2 down to the bottom side against trips. Darby's going to funnel Cooper in and then leap to get a hand on this football. If we do have to play these guys, and Millette at this point I think can be looked at as a starter. We don't, quote, start him all the time because we have Daryl Worley, we have Kyle Hamilton, we have Geno Stone, and when he comes back healthy, we have Marcus Williams. But Arthur Millette is a starter caliber guy. I'm not sure that people would consider Darby or Rock Ya-Sin starter caliber guys, but the reps when they've been on the field have been quite good. Like I said, Darby's only played 18 snaps in the last 4 weeks. Last one I'll show you in terms of our coverages from those 2 guys. Rock Ya-Sin, he's up at the top of the screen. Now, this is late in the game. I believe the Browns' offense has been broken at this point from the standpoint of they recognized they weren't going to be able to get much done. But this is a rep that's very similar to some reps he had in Week 7 against the Lions when he was on the field, late in the game, of course, when the game was over. Rock Ya-Sin can play. But he just can't get on the field either. I think he's had 26 snaps in the last 5 weeks. And in fact, he was inactive against the Seahawks, like I mentioned before. If Marlon plays and he's healthy and he's good to go, then we're in great shape. I wouldn't panic, however, if either Humphrey or Stevens was to go down. Unfortunately, because both of those guys can play. Both of those guys, if you ask me, have starter caliber physical talent and the ability to play multiple coverages. Let's check out the next element that I want to talk about here, and this is their use of jumbo personnel. This is actually the same sale play that I showed you. Just pointing out now, as I mentioned before, you have an eligible offensive lineman as the sixth tight end. They try to mix it up in terms of run pass when they do so. It's not like it's always run plays when they bring the sixth offensive lineman on. In fact, sometimes it's some of the trick plays or off-schedule plays that I mentioned before. Jumbo 13 here. This is a very weird play. You can see the extra offensive lineman and then two other tight ends. So that offensive lineman I'm calling a tight end, which hence 13, Jumbo 13 though. It's a weird play. It's a play action to Hunt. The routes, the timing on the routes are off. They don't match Watson's drop. It ends up being a sack. This is very weird, and this is not the only time that I've saw this. Watson's at the back of his drop now. Regardless of what we think about the pressure and him starting to move, this route's designed to come back here and then bend back to the top side of our screen. 88, the tight end, is outside released. He's trying to beat this guy to the inside. I think they're trying to make it look like over or Yankee down in the red zone, which you don't often see there. The route timing is weird, and again, that's not the only iteration of this that I've seen. I don't know how to explain that. But 53's on as the third tight end, and of course he's not a pass threat. He's involved in the pass pro. Jumbo 12, the actual tight end motions in the backfield, and they run away from the sixth offensive lineman. So there's clearly an attempt here to get that sixth offensive lineman on the field and then bait the defense into overcompensating to his side, run away from him, or in the case of the first play that I showed you, and I've actually shown you twice, the sail concept, throw the football by baiting the defense into overcompensating. Another one, he lines up at fullback. It's a little play action off of a counter look. They sure do put him everywhere, and this is where this part of the video is perhaps going to turn negative. It seems like an awful lot of time to me must be spent on this stuff. And part of me isn't sure what to say about it. I do wonder how much time is spent with 53 or 66 or 68, because those are the three guys that have been used as the sixth offensive linemen, to my knowledge, this year and some last year. They did it last year. How much time are they spending away from the offensive line group? Why can't an actual tight end get these things accomplished? I'm not sure. I don't know what the return on the investment is. I do have some thoughts about it here in a moment. 53's in the backfield now. It's a joker set. It's going to be a give to Hunt. They're trying to pull defenders away from the point of attack. It's just a power play. They're trying to pull defenders away from the point of attack with the tight end arc releasing and then Watson booting out to this side. So they're just trying to hold people on the backside and let Hunt get behind the kick-out block by 53. It's actually unbalanced as well, not just a sixth offensive lineman. So you've got an eligible tight end here at left tackle, and guard, tackle, actual tight end up to the top side. So you've got a four-man surface there. Sixth offensive lineman, unbalanced to the right, power play, and you get 2 yards. Here he is at fullback. This is one of their more physical plays, a 3rd and 2 last week against Arizona. I actually really like this play from the standpoint of what they're forcing your linebackers to do when 53's in the game. 53's a big guy. He's an offensive lineman. He's coming downhill to ISO block on the frontside inside linebacker, in this case the solo inside linebacker. The right guard, Teller, who's a hell of a football player, he's pulling. Both of those guys end up on the inside linebacker. If you're the inside linebacker, frontside inside linebacker, and you see 53 step to your side, you better be ready to come downhill, because it's not only going to be 53, it could be a pulling lineman. There's 75 or 77. So even though I'm not a huge fan of how much they do this and the time that they must spend on it, I respect this play, even though it's kind of brutal and barbarian, I guess. I am really confused, though, to be honest with you, about how often they're doing this, because they've got 17 turnovers on the year, and it makes me wonder how much time has been spent in practice on these things that perhaps could have been spent on other things. I'll expand on that a little bit more in a moment. Let me switch over to my next playlist. My apologies, I kind of got to do it this way. The sixth offensive lineman leads well, smoothly, I think, into the trick plays. And I want to preface it with this. I'm not coming at this from a Ravens fan's perspective. I'm coming at this from a former defensive coordinator, even at the high school and youth level, obviously. When you have a great defense, very, very good defense, however you want to classify the Browns defense, doesn't matter to me. I don't think you want to put them in bad situations consistently. I think you want to play to their strengths. Don't turn the football over. You don't need to put yourself at risk more often when you have a great defense. And perhaps you don't think they're a great defense. The stats tell a different story, but this is a productive play because it's a defensive pass interference on Brandon Stevens. Amari Cooper's running the deep climb or post concept from the other side. It's just interesting to me that on a 3rd and 1 with a backup quarterback who I think was named the starter that morning, perhaps it was Saturday night, and I could be wrong. This is week 4, so it's been a long time. But you go with the fake tight end sneak, toss to the quarterback, and then a rollout back to the other side. Yes, maybe you need to get things going for your backup quarterback, who's a very talented young man. I understand that. This seems like a whole lot to go through for a guy who was named the starter earlier in the week. And it makes me wonder, A, how many times they practice it, and B, what other things in practice they had to sacrifice in order to get that done. This one didn't work out. This was after the defensive pass interference. I think it's the same possession. Maybe one or two of these plays will work today. Because Alex Van Pelt is sure as shit going to call them. He's going to. They're in the red zone here. And it's a reverse, so it's a normal reverse. So it's not a trick play. You're trying to get the ball to Moore. I understand he's a talented guy. I'm just wondering what impact this has on the defense and on other guys. Maybe this is the reason why he's been traded. Maybe this is related to the thing I'm talking about. I don't know. This is Donovan Peoples-Jones down at the bottom. It's not an indictment of him. I have no idea, but the play is called to his side. There is zero effort here at all. Maybe that's why he's been traded. I don't know. It seems unusual to me that week 4 in the season, you'd have a guy who's contributed in the NFL and played well at times, I think, give no effort on a play that's clearly called to his side. Against the Titans, seems like a lot of work here to throw a screen. It does end up being a 15-yard gain, so it's successful. I do wonder why, and this is look, these plays were called before Nick Chubb got hurt this year. They were utilizing these trick plays often, so this is not, they're compensating for losing Chubb, and they're trying to generate big plays off of it. My overall point that I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's a sweep reverse for 1 yard, is this. As a defensive coach, when your defense is balling, I think you owe it to those guys to put them in a position to succeed and not make things more difficult for them, because they've already shown you that in a, quote, normal 60-minute game, they can play like a bunch of savages out there. That's what the Browns defense has done. Last week versus the Cardinals was the first week that this offense didn't turn the football over all season. Week 9. They have 17 turnovers, including 7 turnovers in the first 3 weeks, all of which Watson played. So it's not like someone can say, well, they've turned the football over a whole lot when Watson hasn't been available. That's not true. Last week was the first week they didn't turn the football over at all. We think we've had turnover issues at the Ravens. They've got 17. It's possible that the amount of time they've spent installing so many other things in practice, even at the NFL level, you don't have an infinite amount of time. I'm speculating here, clearly, that maybe that missed practice time could have been better spent on some things that were more fundamental. and don't open you up more to turn the football over. I'm not sure what the return on the investment is for real on all of those things. You may have a different opinion. No problem. All right, the last element that we'll talk about is the three running backs that they've got and how they utilize Njoku, who I really think is underutilized, to be honest with you. I think the guy's capable of more. So right now without Chubb, they've got Hunt, Ford, and Strong. And I really like Strong. I think he's super talented. They're good players. They can make plays. Get them the football instead of so many trick plays. Get them the football downhill. Do the stretch boot stuff that basically puts defenses in conflict in a very simple manner. You got to win with some of the stretch stuff. I think those guys are talented enough to make plays when they're given yard or given space like this. 7-yard gain last week. Another thing to mention about those three guys, Hunt, Ford, and Strong have 201 carries so far this year and 28 catches. So 229 touches, quote unquote. One fumble. One. Get those guys the football as opposed to all this trickery stuff that I would say is at best right now 50-50 in terms of a positive outcome or a negative one. If you're a Browns fan and you listen this long, forgive me for sounding so negative about the concepts that are being run, but it seems like so much investment when you have guys that appear reliable to me. Now, the yards per carry isn't fantastic. One of them's 4 yards per carry. One of them's 3.7. One of them's 4.5. Somewhere in there is probably an average of 4.1 or 4.2 would be my guess. Only one fumble out of 229 touches. At least bad things aren't happening. At some point, you've got to play to your defense, shorten the football game, and if the running backs aren't fumbling, get them the damn ball. Now, I'm a Ravens fan, but I'm talking as if I'm trying to figure out a way for the Browns to win more football games. Because when I do these previews, I'm thinking, how could they win the football game? What are the elements, the boxes they've got to check off? Well, they've got to not turn the football over, I think. Same thing goes for the Ravens. Let the O-lineman, without the 2 starting tackles, let the O-lineman get up on us, attack us downhill, horizontally at times, and then Deshaun Watson boot off of it and get some time to throw the football. In a normal drop-back situation, I think it's going to be difficult for Deshaun Watson to get time. More of these things, even if it's out of the shotgun, I think is good for the Browns. Putting a formation out there that kind of forces you to tip your hand pre-snap and then run the football back into the boundary. Stack twins over here elicits 2 defenders, free safety out of the box, and then you have a guy down here that doesn't seem like he wants to get involved in the play at all. And more often when I'm watching Seahawks film, people are running the ball to their left. Read into that whatever you want. Let's talk about how they get the ball to David Njoku. Is it not the only way? Because you saw a 3rd down win that he had against Geno Stone earlier. But as a Ravens fan, or even a Browns fan, if you've listened this long, thank you. But one of the ways that it seems somewhat predictable is shotgun formation, Njoku and a second receiver to the boundary, tight end on the same side as Njoku. And I'm going to show you 4 plays, 3 of which are from 2023 this year, 1 from 2022 that check all of those boxes I just described, and then Njoku's getting the ball on a screen or a shovel pass. Now, he's actually not the guy who gets the shovel pass against the Ravens in Week 7 last year, but another iteration of it, Njoku and a wide receiver to the boundary, running back on the same side, quick screen on a 3rd and long. They had to settle for a field goal. I'm not sure why these things can't be accomplished more instead of some of the trick plays, but I guess I'll stop moaning about that. It's tough as a defensive coordinator to watch kids or people play their guts out defensively and then have bad things happen by the offense, turnovers that kind of make them fight uphill even more. All right, shovel passes, last 2 plays I'll show you. This is actually not Njoku, obviously, and it's 2022 film. Running back, tight end, same side, into the boundary, ball's on the right hash, and you can see the receivers into the boundary, so 2 receivers over there, one of which is a tight end. So when I talked about the sail or the over Yankee concept, the ball was generally on the left hash. These plays, these screens to the tight end, the shovel pass, which you'll see this one and one more iteration of it, appear to be called when the ball's on the right hash. I wish I had more time to be able to give you more specific information about other plays and what hash they're run from. Those things don't happen that often because I'm only got so much time. Great play by Kyle Hamilton, forcing the keep read by the quarterback in terms of not giving it to the running back. I'm not sure that he's necessarily seeing Hamilton at all. And then Hamilton comes downhill and gets involved in a tackle. 2023. Ball's on the left hash this time. But what do you got? Njoku's the tight end. Running back, same side. Another receiver up to the top side. Shovel pass to the field. You guys have to let me know if you appreciate the way that I do the previews. I don't like to do predictions. I'm sure other people do predictions quicker and faster. I like to grab elements of the game that I think are important, that I can break down or can show you multiple plays of, and then try to give you some information that maybe will help you either enjoy the game more or recognize things pre-snap and be able to predict things, because it's always fun for me. You can see same play here, except it's from the left-hand side, not the right-hand side like I spoke about earlier. From a Ravens fan's perspective, we've got to be able to stop or slow down the Browns' run game, and I think all three of those running backs are talented. They're not Nick Chubb. That's obvious. We got to be able to stop or slow down the run game. We were amazing against the Lions and the Seahawks in that regard. Sandwiched in between those two, we were not very good against the Cardinals, particularly in the first two quarters. We got to put Watson in known passing situations, defend the screens or the shovel pass like I just showed you, identify the tight end running back into the boundary. Some of the boxes or precursors to those plays being run that obviously the Ravens defense and defensive players would have more specific information than I would. And then we've got to win against their tackles in the pass rush situations. Owe, Van Noy, and Clowney have to win against those guys. You would expect that there's going to be either A, some help for those guys at times, with Willis and Jones both out, or B, some screens. Don't turn the football over offensively, and we put ourselves in a great position to win the football game. If we can get up on top of this team, force them into throwing the football. Yes, Deshaun Watson has produced in the NFL and has all the talent needed to get things done. The film didn't look sharp last week as he was coming back from an extended absence. In my opinion, the Ravens defense has everything required, everything necessary to put a ton of pressure on the Browns with only rushing 4, occasionally 5, and not putting ourselves at risk on the back end. Appreciate it if you guys let me know what you think of the preview. I focused it on some very specific things. I do believe that even if Marlon Humphrey either A, doesn't play or goes out at some point during the game because of a reoccurring hamstring injury, that the Ravens DBs have the talent to get things done out there, even if we put the Browns in those passing situations. I appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this content, this film study preview of the Ravens-Browns AFC North rematch in Week 10, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.